One savage set on live television, one brutal punchline, and suddenly the untouchable fairy tale cracked wide open in front of the entire world. For years, comedians danced around them like they were made of glass, careful, polite, cautious not to cross some invisible royal line. A soft jab here, a gentle tease there, nothing too real, nothing too sharp. And then one night, that restraint exploded. The gloves came off, the filters disappeared, and the global audience realized something chilling. The jokes weren't cruel, they were echoing what millions were already thinking.
You didn't Google these motherfuckers?
One comedian, one line, and suddenly every joke we'd been holding back for years was fair game. That line wasn't exaggeration, it was a warning shot. Because when Chris Rock stepped onto that Netflix stage, he didn't just tell jokes, he detonated a narrative that had been protected for years. He said the quiet part out loud. And once he did, once the sky didn't fall and lightning didn't strike him down, every other comic lined up behind him like sharks scenting blood in the water.
Going on, Oprah, I didn't know. I had no idea how racist they were. It's the royal family. You didn't Google these motherfuckers?
Didn't Google them? The most famous family on Earth, 1,000 years of history. Documented, televised, written about in every language on the planet. And she didn't type their name into a search bar once. That line alone sent shockwaves. Because let's be honest, in the age of smartphones and obsession, you're telling the world you fell in love with literal royalty and never once searched their name? Chris wasn't buying it. Nobody with a functioning brain was buying it. And the laughter wasn't mean. It was recognition. It was the sound of people saying, come on, really?
Going on, Oprah, I didn't know. I had no idea how racist they were. It's the royal family. You didn't Google these motherfuckers?
Then he sharpened the blade even further, and when he reached the analogy, that Budweiser comparison became legendary overnight. Simple, brutal, impossible to argue with. It sliced through years of carefully crafted interviews in under 10 seconds. But he wasn't done. Oh no, he went for the jugular when he addressed the palace scandal that had dominated headlines for weeks. The infamous question about what color the baby might be. A global outrage, a moral earthquake. And Chris dismantled it in one breath. They wanted to know how brown the baby's going to be.
Like marrying into the Budweiser family and going, they drink a lot. This motherfucker's invested in slavery like it was Shark Tank.
I'm like, that's not racist cuz even black people want to know how brown the baby going to be. The room gasped. And then they laughed, because suddenly the framing shifted. What had been weaponized as the smoking gun of institutional evil was reframed as something far more ordinary, curiosity. And once that narrative cracked, once people realized they were allowed to question it without being labeled monsters, the floodgates opened. Colin Jost didn't hesitate. President Trump also announced a new trade deal with the UK. All that Britain demands in return is that we keep these two countries, billions of people. And neither side wants custody. That's not just a joke, that's a geopolitical punchline. They became international hot potatoes, bouncing between continents while claiming exile and empowerment in the same breath.
Know how brown the baby's gonna be. I'm like, that's not racist. Cause even black people wanna know how brown the baby gonna be.
Then came the Elon comparison, savage in its simplicity. It would be like if the Prince of England gave it all up just to marry an actor from Suits. An actor from Suits, not an Oscar winner, not a box office queen. A supporting role on a cable legal drama most Americans didn't even know existed until royalty got involved. That line hurt because it forced the audience to stare at the trade-off. Centuries of monarchy for Hollywood adjacency. Snell twisted the knife even deeper. NBC has announced plans for a spin-off to the hit series Suits. It will focus on Meghan Markle's character struggle to balance her legal career while also caring for an unemployed immigrant. Unemployed immigrant. On primetime television. About a prince. And nobody blinked. That's when you know the cultural tide has turned.
President Trump also announced a new trade deal with the UK that will reopen British markets for American companies. All that Britain demands in return is that we keep these two.
And then came the lifestyle show, the pretzel bags. The moment that accidentally summarized everything. Taking pretzels out of one bag, placing them into another, labeling them with a fancy marker, and presenting it like revolutionary domestic wisdom. Jimmy Fallon couldn't contain himself. What is the number one question that mystifies scientists? Is there life on another planet? Oh no. Why does Meghan Markle make her own pretzel bags? It wasn't the pretzels. It was what they represented. Royal privilege repackaged as relatable domestic charm. A duchess who once lived in palaces now teaching the public how to transfer snacks between containers. You truly cannot script irony this cleanly. Fallon went further. It's strange when you marry a prince and you're the breadwinner of the family. And suddenly, the fairy tale flipped. The prince, sixth in line, grandson of the longest reigning monarch in British history, now managing warehouse inventory for wildflower honey and artisan jam. What a trajectory. Then came the memoir, 600 pages of confession, frostbite anecdotes, and oversharing that no editor dared trim. It broke records, fastest-selling nonfiction book ever.
Elon built electric cars, he's going to Mars. Why isn't he even involving himself with Twitter? It would be like if the Prince of England gave it all up just to marry an actor from Suits.
And Jimmy Kimmel turned it into a late-night roast. The Prince and the Penis. That's what 600 pages of unfiltered intimacy gets you. A global punchline. Stephen Colbert mocked the M&H nicknames like they were branding exercises for a luxury startup instead of a marriage. Joe Coy delivered the Golden Globes dagger. Turns out, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will still get paid millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing. And that's just by Netflix. That line hit differently in a room full of actors who claw for every audition. Millions. For content nobody can describe. But if American comedians were amused, British comedians were personal. This wasn't celebrity gossip for them. This was family drama. They watched that 12-year-old boy walk behind his mother's coffin. They forgave the Vegas photos, the Nazi costume, the mistakes. And then they watched him go on American television and torch the institution his grandmother embodied for 70 years. Jimmy Carr didn't whisper. Meghan Markle is, of course, a lifelong feminist, demonstrated by marrying a prince and giving up her job. Contradiction wrapped in a smile. And then, they'd now like to split their time between spending your money in the UK and spending your money in Canada. Taxpayer-funded complaints about taxpayer-funded privilege. That irony was too loud to ignore. Simon Brocken did something almost heroic. He watched the entire Netflix documentary. Before I watched it, I was not a fan of theirs. But now I've actually heard their side of the story. I hate them. That wasn't cruelty, that was backlash. Because the documentary intended to build empathy and instead amplified irritation. The performative pauses, the curated tears, the constant H&M, it felt rehearsed, branded, manufactured. Then came the book passage about pulling the pin on a fun grenade.
NBC has announced plans for a spin-off to the hit series Suits. It will focus on Meghan Markle's character's struggle to balance her legal career while also caring for an unemployed immigrant.
I actually started rooting for Prince Andrew. When satire makes the scandalous uncle look sympathetic by comparison, you've entered dangerous territory. Kelly Osbourne didn't sugarcoat it. I think Harry is _, blunt, unfiltered. And when someone raised in rock and roll chaos calls you dramatic, that carries weight. Her mother, Sharon Osbourne, went even deeper, accusing them of turning family into product, pain into business model. Their living is by telling their truth on the royal family. And that's the real fracture line. Because when controversy becomes your revenue stream, peace becomes unprofitable. Bill Maher summed up the contradiction perfectly. You can't be these people who were so mean to us, poor us, and then write a book about how much you don't want attention. A book tour about privacy. Interviews about wanting silence. Magazine covers declaring exhaustion from cameras. And then South Park delivered the cultural verdict. We want privacy. We want privacy. Flying on private jets. Shouting through megaphones about being left alone. The satire wrote itself. Family Guy added, "Sir, you're millions from Netflix for no one knows what. Put it with the rest of them." And just like that, they weren't royalty anymore. They weren't activists. They weren't victims. They were content. The Spotify deal collapsed. The podcast fizzled. A Spotify executive publicly called them grifters. Not whispered, broadcast. The Netflix projects became punchlines. Jam jars turned into memes. Dog biscuits became symbols of out-of-touch branding. The scoreboard doesn't lie. They left the monarchy seeking freedom and control over their narrative. Instead, they became raw material for every comedian with a microphone. The difference? The monarchy provided structure. The entertainment industry provides exposure and then feeds on you. Chris Rock questioned the story. Jimmy Fallon mocked the pretzels. Kelly Osbourne called out the whining. Bill Maher diagnosed the hypocrisy.
What is the number one question that mystifies scientists?
Is there life on another planet?
Oh no. Why does Meghan Markle make her own pretzel bags? They don't know why.
That's interesting. She takes it from one bag and puts it in another bag.
It's another bag.
And that confuses.
South Park animated the contradiction. Different angles. Same conclusion. You cannot demand privacy while chasing every camera. You cannot preach hardship from a Montecito mansion. You cannot fly private to climate conferences and lecture strangers about carbon footprints. You cannot control a narrative when your own words keep colliding. And here's the devastating truth. This isn't jealousy. It isn't hatred. It's disbelief. The story stopped making sense. And once disbelief sets in, laughter follows. The laughter you heard, from Chris Rock to South Park, isn't the cause of their downfall. It's the symptom. The sound of a public that no longer accepts the script being sold. And the hardest part? There's no rebrand that fixes contradiction. No documentary that repairs credibility. No memoir sequel that rewrites cultural memory. Until actions match words, the punchlines will keep coming. And here's where the story stops being funny and starts becoming something far more dangerous. Because once you become the punchline, you don't control when the laughter stops. The monarchy gave them something priceless. Mystique. Structure. A built-in mythology that stretched back 1,000 years. Crowns, ceremonies, history carved into stone. When they walked away from that machine, they believed they could recreate the magic on their own terms. Hollywood style, California sunlight, carefully curated vulnerability. But instead of mystique, they got exposure. Raw, unfiltered, relentless exposure. And the entertainment industry doesn't protect you, it monetizes you. Let's talk about Spotify, a massive deal, millions on the table. A chance to build something meaningful. Archetypes was introduced like it would redefine female storytelling. It was marketed as revolutionary, intimate, empowering. And then, silence. Long gaps. Minimal output. Eventually, cancellation. And then the moment that no publicist could spin, a Spotify executive calling them grifters on his own podcast. Not anonymous. Not leaked. Public. That word echoed louder than any press release ever could. Grifters. That wasn't just criticism, that was an industry verdict. Then came Netflix. The documentary pulled viewers, yes, but let's be honest about why. Curiosity, skepticism, hate watching. People tuned in not to be converted, but to evaluate, to fact check, to observe the body language, to see whether the emotional beats felt authentic or rehearsed. And once that 6-part series ended, something unexpected happened. Sympathy didn't skyrocket. Fatigue did. Because after hours of cinematic lighting, slow-motion hand-holding, and dramatic retellings, the audience wasn't asking how could this happen to them. They were asking, is that it? Then came the follow-up projects. The cooking show that instantly became meme material. The polo documentary that nobody had requested. The American Riviera Orchard brand, jam jars, artisanal honey, dog biscuits with luxury price tags. It felt less like a lifestyle revolution and more like a celebrity merch table dressed in pastel. Conan O'Brien and Ryan Reynolds couldn't resist. He works for Meghan Markle. Really tiny jams. Harvestable jams. Made from the oils of Montecito. That's the thing about comedy. It doesn't just mock. It crystallizes perception. Once a product becomes shorthand for out-of-touch vanity, it's almost impossible to reverse that image. The jam wasn't just jam anymore. It symbolized the disconnect between branding and substance. And here's the cruel irony. They left the royal family because they didn't want to be part of someone else's machine. They wanted autonomy, creative control, independence. But what did independence deliver? 1,000 smaller machines. South Park, Family Guy, late-night monologues, British panel shows, YouTube commentary channels, TikTok satire. They didn't escape being content. They multiplied it. Spitting Image portrayed them as caricatures so sharp they felt almost documentary-level revealing. The microwave bit, the exaggerated entitlement, the California regular couple fantasy performed within celebrity zip codes. Some of that content mysteriously disappeared, vanished, unavailable. And nothing fuels curiosity faster than removal. When something is scrubbed, people dig harder. And that's the dangerous cycle. Attempting to suppress satire only feeds it. South Park even doubled down after whispers of legal pressure surfaced. Because satire thrives on resistance. The more you push back, the more it grows teeth. Meanwhile, the contradiction narrative only intensified. Privacy tours conducted through global press appearances, climate lectures delivered via private jet, complaints about media intrusion paired with multi-million-dollar media contracts. Bill Maher's philosophical diagnosis still echoes. You can't want it both ways. That's the central fracture. Not race, not monarchy, not politics. Consistency. Because audiences can forgive almost anything except hypocrisy. You can be privileged, you can be outspoken, you can be ambitious. But when words and actions diverge publicly, repeatedly, visibly, trust erodes. And once trust erodes, humor replaces reverence. Think about the transformation. Harry was once the rebellious prince people adored. The soldier, the cheeky spare, the boy who walked behind a coffin and made the world cry. Meghan was the American outsider who injected fresh energy into a centuries-old institution. Together, they were positioned as the modern evolution of monarchy. Now, they're case studies in branding miscalculation. The monarchy understood something ancient. Mystique requires distance. Queen Elizabeth rarely explained herself. She didn't sit down for emotional expos. She didn't monetize grievances. She endured. That silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Comedy doesn't create cultural shifts, it reveals them. When late-night hosts, animated shows, British panel comics, and global streaming specials all converge on the same critique, that's not coincidence, that's atmosphere. So where does it end? Either consistency replaces contradiction or the punchlines grow sharper. Because until actions and messaging align, the megaphone yelling "we want privacy from a private jet" will remain one of the most devastating images in modern satire. And history is watching. Not the fairy tale version, not the PR polished version, the unfiltered one. And right now, the laughter is louder than the legacy.